A very good afternoon to everybody from Mark Hogan Weather HQ in Everton, Rossshire. The sun is shining. Boy, oh boy, what glorious conditions we are experiencing over recent days. It's actually been quite a dry week, actually, especially further north up across our part of the UK, which is just about 14 miles roughly north of Inverness. But a very warm welcome to everybody. Thanks for clicking on to edition 92 of the Global Weather and Climate Report. How is everybody doing this afternoon? What's the weather like where you are? Where are you watching from? I would be delighted to find out. Very good afternoon to Richard Trott. I believe he is tuning into the Man United game, which is literally just kicking off. Mark Kinnish is present this afternoon. We've got Katrine, Paul James. Very warm welcome from a sunny, warm Hampshire. It would be good to find out whereabouts you're watching from this afternoon and what your weather conditions are as well. Richard says it's not shining here, dull for the last 4 days. I happen to notice that actually, Richard. I think it was a tweet that you put out earlier on. Only 13.1 Celsius. Now the cloud cover is coming and going a little bit. We've got sunshine, but it had been quite cloudy. But with the sun, I think the temperature's around about 18 Celsius here this afternoon, up here in the far north of the British Isles. Very warm welcome to Adam Blunston. Very good afternoon to you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. I will do my very best to get the pronunciations of names correct. It happened to be after the live stream last week that Lindsay kindly said that it's Ewan. So I said to her, why the heck did you not come in and rescue me? Because when you're in a live stream, you're very much open to embarrassing yourself. And I probably did a pretty good job at embarrassing myself last week. So, yeah, I'll try my very best to get the names, even though it's relatively straightforward, relatively simple to understand. Marky Boy likes to make it a little bit more complicated and embarrass myself. Thanks to Lindsay for moderating once again this afternoon. I do greatly appreciate that. She is a busy lady, and I do appreciate her support and contribution to the channel as well. Suppose she has to kind of do that a little bit, but nonetheless, thanks very much for that anyway. So yeah, we've got 11 concurrent viewers at the moment, and I'm looking forward to going through some of the global extremes that have taken place in the past week or so. We've seen a derecho complex of thunderstorms that rattled through the Houston area, producing upwards of 100-mile-per-hour winds right through the heart of downtown. That's actually the first place that I visited all the way back in 1998. The first place I visited in America. I think I've visited 26 states, and Texas was the very first place that I happened to go to. Now, it's well over 10 years now since the last time I was in America. So I used to focus a lot on American weather, even more so than the UK and Europe. It's that was the that was the real focus of my interest in weather was America because of the extremes that they experience in that part of the world, connected by both the tropics to the south and the Arctic to the north. What a climate they have in the US. So many different climate types as well, of course. So yeah, Paul James saying footage from Houston was really bad. Paul, am I right in saying that you used to live in America? Is that correct? Um, California, by any chance that you happen to be in one time before, I believe. But I know you're obviously in Hampshire, uh, living now, of course. So yeah, let me just kind of warm things up. We've got 15 concurrent viewers. Do me a favor, everybody, hit that like button. Anybody that's on the live chat, I would appreciate a like because that shows YouTube and it helps with the algorithm of the channel. It helps the channel get more reach and effect on YouTube. So I would greatly appreciate that if you could hit the like button. Have you subscribed to the channel? Are you a lover of all things weather? If you are, this is a channel that hopefully is for you because I'm going to be releasing at this very moment next week, we'll be talking about the summer forecast. And I'm working hard at the moment to try and build the ideas. We're going to compare the pattern from the past spring last year with the spring that we've got at the moment here. Some interesting correlations, some interesting similarities. We'll look at that in the live stream today as well. And we'll look at all other aspects as well. So Adam says, I don't know what the summer will bring. But that, if I'm being honest with you, Adam, I'm not entirely 100% sure myself, my friend, because it could go either way. We've got this warm water that's nowhere near as extreme as it was this time last year, which, remember, we had the warmest June on record for the UK, and then it just flipped on its head. And I think the El Nino did a lot of the reason behind that change, the dramatic change between June being very, very warm, very dry as well, and then all of a sudden it completely flipped on its head. We had a very, very wet July and a pretty wet August, and really right the way through, it has been pretty wet in our part of the world. Did you check out the Aidan McGivern interview in yesterday's Weather Talk episode 3? I hope you had the chance to look at it. It's only 29 minutes long, or just under 30 minutes long. Very, very interesting chat with Aidan with regards to his career, going from interest. He was talking about I think it was the 1981 snow event that really was the seed to his interest. Born and brought up in the Cardiff area of South Wales. I didn't actually realise the guy was Welsh. I thought he was English, but it's an interesting part of the world, Wales, because you've got this quite strong Welsh accent, but also you've got a quite I don't want to insult anybody from Wales, but you've got quite an English type of accent in that part of, depends on what part of Wales. I think North Wales tends to have quite a an English type accent, whereas down in South Wales you've got a stronger Welsh accent. If I'm right in saying, based on my my own understanding of Wales. Shinasu is in the house as well. I hope that is the right pronunciation. Here we go with some of the interesting pronunciations. Mark is also here as well. Very warm welcome to Mark. Mr. Fantastic is also here. Thank you very much. It's fantastic to see Mr. Fantastic on the live chat this afternoon. We've got 16 concurrent viewers. Hit that like button. Do me a favor by supporting the channel. I greatly appreciate that. Upcoming summer forecast will be released right here a week from now, so I hope you can check that out. It's going to be quite an exciting live stream next Sunday, but there's plenty of things to get through in this week's, obviously, as well. So just trying to see through the live chat how everybody is doing. Shinasu, very warm welcome, as I've already said. Whereabouts are you viewing from? I would be interested to find out if anybody is viewing from, other parts of the UK, Ireland, and other parts of the world as well. I'd be quite interested to find out where folk are tuning in from this afternoon, and then we will rattle on. So Paul James says, yes, Mark, lived in Southern California, Riverside, just east of LA. Went through Riverside on a bus. I'm pretty sure very hot part of the world, especially at this time of the year. The marine layer, you've got the nice cooling influence. May Gray and June Gloom, I'm quite well familiarized with that. Then you get east of the mountains and it's a different story altogether. Especially Riverside. Riverside's almost the kind of that point between the cooling maritime influence and the hot desert. Yeah, been to California 3 times. Was in LA. Been to San Diego, up in San Francisco as well. What an amazing place California is, and I had great hopes to visit. The first few times I was in America, it was primarily in the eastern side of the country. Then, for my 21st birthday, flew from New Jersey across to LA, and then I jumped on a Greyhound bus in East LA, not knowing where I was, by the way, and that was quite a very eye-opening experience, may I add. And then I happened to to jump on a Greyhound bus, went up to Salt Lake City, spent the day in Salt Lake City, 32 hours round trip on a bus without a bed for between Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Wasn't back in New Jersey until the Monday morning. That was quite an epic trip, to say the least. Riverside is in a valley, so smog is often an issue. Forms there, yeah, quite trapped. That part of the world you don't really get, especially if you don't get any mixing from wind off the Pacific Ocean. You really have quite a smog issue in that part of California. But yeah, we'll see if there's anybody else on the live chat. We've got 17 concurrent viewers at the moment. Thanks for tuning in this afternoon. The sun is shining here. Is it shining where you are, or is it cloudy? I think we've got a fairly decent weather pattern at the moment. High pressure largely in control of our weather pattern at the moment. It looks as if it's going to try and linger on, I think. It's going to come and go. There's going to be a battle. High pressure to the north, low pressure to the south. That has been keeping the southern half of the UK fairly wet during May so far. Record warm first 16 days to May. I was a little bit surprised to see that, but it was actually Aidan McGivern that put that tweet out. I think it was Friday he put that out, and it's running slightly drier than average as well, which is quite interesting. Now, I had a warmer and slightly drier than average May predicted. And so far it's running not too bad. Only a mere 11 millimeters of rain has fallen up here in the north of the UK, but we've got over a May's worth of rain in parts of southern UK. So definitely a north-south split. That can quite often be the case. We had that last May. You get an area of low pressure down near Biscay, got a dominant block to the north. Quite often you get that easterly flow along the east coast, as Richard has kindly pointed out. 4 days in a row of cloud cover, mist, murk, fret, keeping the temperatures pegged back at around 12, 13 Celsius. Quite often reflects, the air temperature reflects the sea surface temperature, and obviously once you get further west, especially to the west of the Pennines or the Grampians or whatever, you can get quite a different feel to the air. Obviously, in California, you've got big contrasts. You've got 60s along the coast. Get over to the east of the mountains, and you've got temperatures well into the 100s in that part of the world. And yeah, quite an interesting climate to say the least here. So Paul's saying, I was there in 1984, and the smog was an issue just prior to the Olympic Games. So, how many years did you live, Paul, in Southern California? I would be interested to know. Gavin Partridge is in the house, everybody. Thank you very much, Gavin, for tuning in to the live stream this afternoon. Hope you're enjoying your weekend so far. Gavin will probably be live at 6 p.m, so I do encourage you to check out his live stream. I hope I'm right in saying he's live. Don't actually know for sure, because I think he did a members only live stream. Was it yesterday? So, don't know. Can you confirm with me whether you're live tonight at 6 o'clock, Gavin? So Paul says he was there for 1 year. Certainly an interesting experience. Katrine saying it was sunny an hour ago at 3 p.m. in Thurrock, and it has now clouded over. Gavin, what is your weather conditions down in the Northamptonshire area of the UK at the moment? I would be curious to know. The cloud cover is definitely, it's a bit of a peekaboo the sun is doing at the moment. We've got 19 concurrent viewers at the moment. We will now go into today's content and talk about first and foremost the temperature anomaly across the planet for the first 15, 16 days of the month. See here, according to Weatherbell, it's through the first 14 days of the month, which is a bit of a pity that it's not showing a little bit more than that. And we'll see what happens. So Mark says, Mark, have I got that right? I think 2019 summer had a bit of everything. I'm pretty sure that is the case, Mark. Yeah, you've probably written about a million things and I've missed every single one of them. I do apologise Mark, if I'm not reading out your any of your comments, my friend. Not that much rainfall this last week here, much less than forecast, says says Paul. Let me just see here. Let me just flick through and see um, what Mark is saying, because I don't want to miss all your comments, Mark. I'm sorry about that, my friend. I think Adam, it'll be. Sorry, folks, just bear with me because I'm actually looking at my phone to look at the comments. Right. Tell me this. Tell you what. If Mark wants to write another comment down, and I'll try and read out what he said, because I'm struggling to find stuff. Katrine says my ash tree only got its first leaves last week, which is quite interesting. Usually this happens in April. It's a month late. Gavin says weather is sunny and warm here at the Targe. Gavin, are you live tonight? I'm suffering from uh, with the allergy on top of hay fever, and I'm dosed up on medicines. So let's just say my stream might be an experience this evening. So yes, he is live, and I do encourage everybody to check that out if they're free. So we've got 18 concurrent viewers. Hit that like button. I would do greatly appreciate that. And yeah, Shinasu, have you let me know where you are? Because I'd be curious to find out where you are. Southwest Wiltshire. Ah, okay, okay, excellent stuff. Very interesting. So yeah, let's go for this here. So Mark says, Mark, I think this summer will be like 2019, back and forth, one with some heat spikes and some wet ones too. And Gavin says, live at 6 p.m. Yeah, I actually do think that we are going to have a back and forth kind of summer this year. I think there's going to be heat spikes, but there's plenty of soil moisture. We will look at that as well in today's video, and that could have a tempering effect on the level of heat that we may see this summer, which will be quite interesting to see how hot it actually does get. Wouldn't be surprised if we get into the mid 30s in parts of the Midlands and the southeast this year. 2015 had quite a lot of back and forth as well, and 2015 was an El Nino year. In fact, it was a super El Nino back then as well. Remember, we're transitioning from El Nino to La Nina. What influence may that have on our part of the world? Well, the jury is very much out on that. Will it have an impact even? Because I noticed that NOAA and other weather sources out there kind of dismiss the influence on of El Nino and La Nina in our part of the world. Now we are quite far away from the eastern equatorial Pacific, obviously, but there is definitely effects. I think you transition from El Nino to La Nina, and quite often you can get a cooler and wetter summer, mid and late summer in particular, but it depends on how quickly we transition from El Nino to La Nina and how quickly the atmosphere, and this is the important thing, it's not so much just the cold waters or the warm waters in the eastern equatorial Pacific, but it's the response to the atmosphere. That is obviously critical. Now, there was quite a slow response, in my opinion, last year with going from a 3 year La Nina to a rather strong El Nino. But we did obviously see a quite a dramatic flip last year from dry during the first half of the summer to quite wet during the mid and second half of the summertime. Now, I think that was partly down to the El Nino, but the atmosphere was slow to respond. Now, this is the SOI, by the way, and you can see when it's firmly negative, the atmosphere is in an El Nino state. When it's firmly positive, that is the atmosphere in more of a La Nina state. And you can see here for the 30-day average of the SOI, it's still showing negative values here. So the daily contribution is is bouncing between positive and negative here at the moment. What you want to see is the atmosphere becoming more in firm positive territory. So 5.99 is the last reading. So this is the measure of air pressure between Darwin in Australia and Tahiti in the South Pacific, and we will eventually start to see the SOI going more positive, and that will be uh, reflective of La Nina and the atmospheric response. Richard says that the 2007 was a La Nina year, which means that the equatorial Pacific experienced cooler average surface and subsurface temperatures. The cooling began in March of 2007. Now we know what happened in summer 2007. We had one of the wettest summers on record here in the UK. Yeah, horrible wet summer indeed, Richard. 2007, Gavin says 2007 Nino to Nina flip was very quick. We're as much slower this year. So hopefully we can avoid anything that bad. In other words, as bad as 2007. It doesn't get much worse than 2007. 2012 was a very wet summer as well. It was a very, very dry April and March in 2012, and then we've seen a dramatic flip to one of the wettest Aprils, I believe, on record for the UK. Interesting 2012, by the way, because we had Scotland hit 30 Celsius for the first time on record that year, and then we obviously know what took place later on that summer. We had some very interesting temperature swings back and forward back in 2012. So I think we could have a bit of a mixture this year. I don't think it's going to be a 2018 type summer, but I also don't think it's going to be a 2007 or 2012 type summer either. I think we're going to get a mixture in between with that. Persistent blocking has also been the case in over the last 12 months. We've seen that block over Greenland, and interesting how Aidan in the interview yesterday actually spoke about that persistent block up towards Greenland. Bless you. Bless you. Lindsay's sneezing away, suffering from hay fever at the moment quite badly. I'm fortunate enough to not experience hay fever. I think I've got a little bit of a runny nose, which makes me think that there may be a little hint of hay fever, but nothing too extreme. So anyway, let's go to the temperature anomalies for around the planet through the first half of May. So obviously, according to Aidan of the Met Office, he says that the first 16 days of May have been the warmest on record for the UK, and especially so up across Scotland, where it has been a very, very warm month compared to average. Mr. Fantastic says August 1912, the worst. Don't quite remember 1912, and I'm sure Mr. Fantastic doesn't remember 1912 either, but interesting nonetheless. Thanks for your contribution to the live chat. Always interested to find out other people's opinions and knowledge sharing as well. We've got 21 concurrent viewers at the moment on the live chat. So notice here, Western Russia, it's probably been one of, if not the coldest first half to May on record. Europe really has a tale of two halves. Let's look specifically at Europe. Look at that anomaly over the far east of Europe through the first half of the month compared to the western half. Now, arguably, according to this CDAS data, Highlands of Scotland actually stands out along with the parts of Norway as the warmest places compared to average for the entire month of May so far. A very distinct contrast between cold in Russia and warm in Western Europe. And it'll be interesting to see how the last 10 or so 12 days of the month pans out in this part of the continent in terms of the weather pattern. High pressure has been very dominant, especially across the north. Low pressure just to the southwest of the UK and Ireland. That's been feeding a lot of showers and longer spells of rain Thunderstorm activity has been quite prevalent in parts of England, Wales, southern parts of Ireland as well. Up here across the north, like I've already said, a mere 11 millimetres of rain has fallen. Stark contrast to last month, where I think it was about 86 millimetres fell, with 22 days of measurable rainfall. This year, you could actually count in one hand the amount of days that we've seen rain so far this month. Paul also says that the 2011 tornado season I followed, and yes, it was immense. This year has been quite interesting, Paul, in terms of the the tornadoes were actually quite quiet to start with. They usually peak April, May. You've got the big collision between cold still to the north, hot and humid conditions building over the Gulf of Mexico, that then starting to exert its influence in the south and southeastern half of the United States. So the big contrast, areas of low pressure, frontal systems moving through, generate those outbreaks of severe weather in the south and obviously the plain states of America. Very, very busy spell in the last week to 10 days, even 2 weeks. We've had some very damaging tornadoes, very devastating tornadoes, and unfortunately, this season has become an above average season, having started off below average. So let's have a quick look, a scan through the rest of the planet in terms of the temperature anomaly. So, like I say, that cold anomaly over Russia really stands out in a global sense. Now, we do have some quite cold anomalies over Greenland, which is quite interesting to see. Much of North America is above average, with the exception of the west of the United States, and that is your classic temperature anomaly profile for a big season, severe weather-wise, when you've got a trough in the west, a ridge in the east, then you've got the big clash in between. Now, we'll talk a little bit about the ratio that ran through the Houston area and adjacent areas in a few minutes. We've got quite a big contrast over China at the moment. Cold south, warm north. Mongolia is firmly warmer than average. Much of India and Pakistan into Afghanistan, Iran. The Middle East is running below average, which is quite interesting at the moment. And we've got some fairly warm conditions across the sub-Sahara region of Africa. Equatorial Africa is running warmer than average with the exception of the east. So parts of Somalia, Kenya, for example, running slightly below average. We've got wetter than average conditions in this part of Eastern Africa, which is very much driven by El Nino and La Nina as well, and the Indian Ocean dipole. Got the warm waters or versus cold waters in the eastern versus the western part of the Indian Ocean. You've got rainfall distribution is very much driven by that warm or cold anomaly over the Indian Ocean basin. Cold on average actually across parts of eastern Algeria, Libya, Egypt. We're actually seeing a colder than average May so far. Australia, bit of a split here. We've got some areas of below average across the central portion of the Oceania. We've got a very cold start first half to May in New Zealand, if you notice, which is quite interesting. Very cold across Argentina and Chile, whereas up across Brazil, especially southern Brazil, running very warm compared to average. Mexico has seen remarkable heat. Wildfires and record temperatures as high as 51 Celsius in parts of Mexico. We've got drought, severe drought conditions across Central America at this moment in time. Parts of the Caribbean as well, seeing significant deficits of rainfall. So when you've got lower than average rainfall in this part of the world, the heat really is immense, and that is a problem at the moment. Western parts of Africa, you're seeing warmer than average. Morocco, for example, the Canaries is running actually warmer than average, which is quite interesting at the moment. And obviously, the UK is running very warm compared to average also at the moment here. Now, let's have a look at the ratio that they affected the Houston area just a few nights ago. The first paragraph I'll read through initially. You can see the damage to that building, that skyscraper. Quite a lot of windows punched out in high-rise buildings in downtown Houston. It looks as if a tornado went through or a major hurricane went through. It was literally the straight line winds that delivered It's basically a line of organized thunderstorms that just run right through a given area. That is what a derecho is. It's a complex network of thunderstorms, all organized in one mass that basically bulldozes through a given area. So from the evening, this is off Wikipedia, by the way, from the evening of May 16th, 2024 to midnight on the 17th of, so the 16th into the 17th of May, a derecho struck the Gulf Coast of the United States from southeast Texas to Florida, causing widespread damage, particularly in the city of Houston and surrounding metropolitan area. At least 7 people were killed by the storms, dubbed the Houston derecho by the National Weather Service, which brought winds of 90 to 100 miles per hour. And you can see here this building with the windows blown out. Lots of tree damage, trees getting stripped of their leaves and branches getting ripped off with those severe winds. Check this video out here by Disaster News. This was obviously the moment when the derecho ran through downtown Houston in Texas. Pretty dramatic stuff for sure. So let's have another quick look and see what has been happening around the world. This is from Nanning City in part of China. Dramatic flooding that you can see here. Some very extreme weather in parts of China. China has a very kind of similarity to the United States in terms of climate. Some very, very extreme types of weather. There's been some major tornadoes that have affected parts of China in recent weeks as well. This is another video of that extreme flooding in parts of China. By the way, we've also seen some pretty major flooding events in parts of Europe in recent times, and there's also a similarity this spring to what was seen back last spring. Parts of Italy, I think, seen some of its wettest or most severe flooding in 70 years in parts of Italy last year, and we've seen a pretty significant tornado in parts of Italy as well in recent days. This is the scene from a part of Germany. So thunderstorms causing flash flooding, cars getting swept away. This is a region of France. Let me see if we can see any other. This was a powerful storms that ripped through southwestern Florida. I don't know if this is associated with the derecho that ran through the Houston area. I'm not sure. We've got 23 concurrent viewers at the moment. Thank you very much for tuning in to the 92nd edition of the Global Weather and Climate Report. Hit that like button and help me out. I do greatly appreciate that if you can do that. Let's continue to look through here and see some of the flooding in parts of Indonesia. Now we have got somewhat of a phase 4 MJO at the moment here, so that does enhance convection in the Southeast Asia, Northern Australia part of the world. When you have that massive flooding, extreme rains in the Milan area of Italy. So this is what I'm talking about. We've seen similar situation around this time last year in parts of Italy and Central Europe. So yeah, quite significant flooding in parts of this region of the world. This is the Porto Alegre area. This is going back to the 15th of May. Some major flooding going on in parts of southern Brazil now. We've got drought in the northern parts of the country, but down across the far south of Brazil has been really hit hard by devastating floods in this southern part of Brazil. This was a major eruption of Mount Ibu in the Halmahera region of Indonesia. Now, there has been quite a lot of volcanic activity in this part of the world in recent times. I know Richard Trott knows a fair wee bit about the volcanic eruptions and whether there's any influence, how much that ash cloud reaches the upper levels of the atmosphere into the stratosphere, can sometimes have some influences on weather. Heavy snowstorm in a part of Turkey, which is quite interesting. This was back on the 14th of May, so some pretty big extremes going on in that part of the world as well. So yeah, let me have a quick check and show you some of the lightning that was detected by some of those storms in recent times down across the southeast Texas area. So this is an interesting tweet here, and this is basically showing the derecho running from the northwest of Texas. Look at the lightning, look at the complex, huge, vast area of thunderstorm complexes running kind of southeast and then east through Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, into Florida, and into the central region of Florida. So that's the lightning, along with the radar image capturing that derecho across southeastern Texas and the southeastern United States. This is another view of the same complex. Again, highest cloud tops going right up to probably about 50,000-60,000 feet through the atmosphere, punching into the lower stratosphere, these storms as they run southeast. So pretty dramatic stuff. Obviously sad for the folks that have lost loved ones through this storm. This is another fascinating video of the trees being snapped in downtown Houston. Looks like a bomb went off. An atmospheric explosion really is probably a good way of describing this, but very, very sad stuff indeed. And quite a considerable amount. Look at that building there. Look at the amount of windows getting blown out. So I'd be very curious to know what the economic loss was of this, how much this storm actually cost, because it probably has had the same effects as a category 2 or even 3 hurricane. This thing going through downtown. That was a video, by the way, captured by Storm Chaser Houston on Twitter. So pretty dramatic stuff. Anyway, let me see if there's any other interesting things going on at the moment here. Some very interesting things going on up in Scandinavia, where we've had the remarkable cold persisting for quite some time in the northern portions of Scandinavia. Let me see here. So there's that tweet here from Aidan McGivern showing that it's actually warmer than the previous record, which is that little orange line at the very top. That is the record, and the temperature has exceeded that. This is the temperature anomaly. So you can see here that the warmest temperatures compared to average is actually across Highland Scotland. If you notice, really from the Western Central Belt, Glasgow, Bishopton area, and then northwards, that is where the anomaly has been in excess of 3.5 Celsius above the long-term average, which is quite interesting stuff actually. So let me see if there's anything else going on at the moment here with regards to that, and then we can move on to something else. So yeah, not really seeing much else, I'm afraid. This is the current temperature anomalies around the sea surface temperatures, by the way. So this is the Indian Ocean running warmer than average. Southwestern Indian Ocean to the south of Madagascar is actually slightly below average. Very warm waters against the west coast of Australia at the moment here. We have got the La Nina signature now starting to show its hand. You can see the cold waters now starting to become a little bit more mature. Cold waters off the west coast of the United States at the moment, even to the south of Alaska, through the Aleutians towards the far eastern Russia, you can actually see below average temperature anomalies. Then we've got a ribbon of above average extending from Japan and through the central swathe of the North Pacific. This is the Atlantic Basin, still running very, very warm compared to average at the moment. So the tropical and subtropical portion of the Atlantic is running record warm. We've also got warm water extending into the mid latitudes a bit more. That area of cold and average water off the east coast of the United States. Now, this is not a good signature for the hurricane season because you've got those cold waters. The air tends to want to sink there, but it also acts as an incubator across the main development region, which is the tropical Atlantic. That is where the atmosphere tends to want to rise more, especially when you've got an area of cold and average to the north of the warmer than average. This actually can encourage upward motion over the tropical Atlantic. And when you've got the cooling of the eastern equatorial Pacific, that is an area where you tend to have higher pressure, sinking air, and this all has a detrimental influence on a big hurricane season. This is going to be a major hurricane season in 2024. I'm afraid we've got these cooler than average waters just to the west of the UK and Ireland, as you can see, but the immediate waters surrounding the UK is actually running above average, as you can see in that chart. Now, this is the North Atlantic sea surface temperatures. You can see that they kind of dropped and then they kind of steadily picked up once again during the course of May and April. We've seen this kind of slight rise. We've seen that dip during the latter half of March into early April, then a rise, and then this kind of hovering around 0.3 Celsius above average. Now, looking at the Nino region in particular, you can see here Nino region 1.2, quite a considerable drop to below average. In the key area of Nino region 3-4, we have seen those waters cooling quite a bit here as well. If I can get to the right chart, it would certainly help. Bear with me a second, everybody. So this is Nino region 3.4. Now, this is the main area in which NOAA and the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia also, this is the area where El Nino and La Nina is actually measured. Nino region 3-4, which is slightly out over the eastern equatorial Pacific away from the South American coast. Now, Nino region 1.2 is the area right against the South American coast. You notice here that the temperatures have been about 1 Celsius, between 1 and 1.5 degrees above average back at the end of winter. And as we've went through the course of spring, we've seen quite a steady fall, and now region 3-4 is close to average, which means that we've got essentially a neutral Enso state at the moment. And what I would expect to see as we move through the course of summer, that anomaly going below the average line, which means we need to have 3 consecutive months of over a half a degree below average to constitute La Nina. And I think we will eventually see that taking place here. And then, as I've already said, what influence is that going to have on the global atmosphere? This is something that I wanted to point out, by the way. This is the drought and vegetation for Europe. This was back last July. And look at the amount of continental Europe, including the UK, that had very dry conditions. And we obviously had quite a dry May and June, and that then led to very dry conditions across central and northern portions of Europe. Now, notice here, because we had significant rains further south across the Mediterranean, this was the case even in Iberia, where we had quite a lot of good soil moisture. Even the Catalonia area, which is in severe drought at the moment, back last July, it was actually in quite good form. Now, look at central and northern France, the Low Countries, much of the UK, with exceptions of the West Highlands and parts of Ireland and Northern Ireland, seeing wet soils. But look at eastern parts of the Republic of Ireland. We had parts of Wales that were seeing very, very dry conditions. The red actually constitutes alert vegetation stress following rainfall and soil moisture deficit. So the reason why I'm showing you this is I want to compare this last July to where we are at the moment here. And this is, if I can get the right chart, this is actually Europe now. This is the current drought situation in Europe as of the end of April. And you can see that we've almost got the opposite to what showed last July. So we've got severe drought conditions up the eastern side of Spain at the moment. Let's see if I can blow this up just a little bit more so it's easier for you to see this. And we can see the situation here. So Central and Northern Europe last July was in a bad state. This year it's actually more the Mediterranean basin, southeastern Europe, Turkey that is seeing a rainfall deficit, a warning of soil moisture, and you can even see northern portions of Scandinavia seeing slightly drier than average conditions. So that's quite interesting to see versus what we've seen last July. I thought it would be interesting to show you that actually because it's quite an interesting correlation between last year and this year. Also wanted to show you um, the the pattern difference this spring versus last. Now this is a thanks to Richard Troll for sending me this. This is the upper air pattern, March 1st through the middle portion of May, and you can see one or two notable situations going on here. We've got above average heights across the eastern portion of the Atlantic Basin, northwestern Africa. We've also got a notable block over Greenland, positive heights to the north and northwest of the UK and Ireland. And then you've got the focus of the negative centered just to the west of the UK and Ireland, hence why we've had such wet conditions through the course of this spring. Now, this is another way of looking at last year. You notice here that we've actually got a very similar upper air pattern between the 1st of March and the middle of May last year, but the center of that negative is slightly more out over the Atlantic Basin. We've got the block, like we've got at the moment, across Greenland, centered over the Baffin Straits, if you notice here, and we've also got a strong positive, the Canaries, Azores, up into Spain and Portugal here. You've got the negative over the UK and Ireland. So there is a similar 500 millibar pattern this spring versus last spring, and I thought it would be interesting to show you the correlation between the two. So also want to show you the drought situation across the United States. This is as of the 14th of May, and you can see here this is where the driest conditions are across the central United States, West Texas, the Four Corners area of the country. That is obviously Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, and Arizona. We've got drought conditions, which is quite often the case here. Parts of the northern Rockies is seeing drier than average conditions. And the central plain states. The east is looking not too bad. We've got some drought conditions across parts of central and southern Florida, with the exception to the far south. Drier than average across parts of North Carolina and Virginia here, nosing into far eastern West Virginia. But the Tennessee Valley not looking too bad. The Ohio Valley not looking too bad either. The upper Mississippi is looking a little bit drier. Far northern portions of Minnesota as well, drier than average conditions at the moment here. So that is the situation with regards to the US drought. Canada was also looking quite dry. If we happen to look at Thierry Goose's Twitter, you can see what Canada is looking like in terms of drought situation at this moment in time. If I can get to the right chart, it certainly helps. So this is as of the end of April. I don't have an updated version of this at my disposal at the moment, but you can see very dry conditions across parts of much of Canada. Really is actually running very, very dry compared to average, and that doesn't necessarily bode particularly well for the upcoming summer season, obviously. So yeah, rather dry across much of northern North America, and then the parts of the United States is running quite dry also. So yeah, let me see if there's anything else that I can find for you, and then we'll kind of round things up for today. We've obviously got some extreme heat going on across parts of Central America. Guatemala, for example, temperatures as high as 44.8 degrees. which is a new record for that particular site, but only 0.2 Celsius below the all-time record for Guatemala, which was set back in 1998. So, like I said, severe drought conditions in parts of Central America, courtesy of El Nino. Parts of Brazil seeing drier than average conditions as well. This is some extreme heat in Belize, which is just to the south of Mexico. Temperatures has 42.2 Celsius at this in recent days. We've had some extreme heat across parts of northern China, high as 35 degrees Celsius. And we've also seen temperatures this year so far as high as 43.7 in parts of China. This is what I was wanting to show you actually. Still upwards, place I'm not going to try to pronounce by the way, but 15 centimeters of snow still lying. I'm assuming this is northern portions of Finland, which makes it the longest snow season in the 21st century, tied with winter 2020. The snow arrived back on the 8th of October last year and has now remained on the ground continuously for 223 days, which is pretty remarkable stuff, actually, especially given how warm other parts of Europe has been this spring so far. So I thought that was quite interesting to show you, actually. Some pretty significant wildfires. Now, I showed you the drought situation in western parts of Canada, but very significant wildfires quite early on in the season in western parts of Canada. So yeah, don't think there's much else to really show you. And yeah, I think I've spoken long enough because it's nearly an hour I've been live here. Have you enjoyed today's content? I hope you have. If you haven't already done so, hit that subscribe button, folks. There is lots of content coming up this week ahead. The release of the summer of 2024 forecast will be a week today at 4 p.m. right here on the channel. There will also be the written form of the forecast on markvoganweather.com. You can check that out when it is released next Sunday as well. And there is monthly outlooks available on the website as well that you can check out, freely available as well. So I hope you can check that out. So yeah, let me just see if there's anybody at the moment in the live chat that is asking any questions. Anybody new? Have I missed anybody? I don't think I have. So yeah, we'll round things up there. Hope you enjoyed today's live stream. Check out Aidan's interview that was released yesterday here on the YouTube channel as well, so you can check that out. And plenty more to come in the week ahead, so keep it right here on markvoganweather.com on YouTube as well. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and I'll see you with a European outlook tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. Have a great day, have a great evening, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.